Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video channel. Thanks for being here. And this is a missing 411 double disappearance, meaning two separate cases, one person missing there, one person missing here, and they're good cases. One of them is very, very recent, just so you know. So I have told you before about the Muon Journal. I was the keynote speaker at their national conference this year. People were so nice. Had a lot of people come up to me afterwards, want to talk, say, we really appreciate the factual presentation you gave. Not a lot of feelings, just straight facts. And since that conference, sold a lot of books that day. I've had even more responses from MUFON members saying, Dave, your books are refreshing because you cite facts and don't give opinion. Thank you. I appreciate when people recognize that. Well, in this month's, and that would be November 2023, in this month's MUFON Journal, they had a case that I've talked about before, but I didn't know this one aspect about it until I read this article in the journal, and I'll read part of it to you to let you understand what was said. On October 11th, 1973, two fishermen were on the Pascagoula River in Mississippi. They were to catch more than just fish that night. Calvin Parker, 18, and Charles Hickson, 42, reported later that they'd been abducted by aliens. Still shaking from their ordeal, they reported the encounter to Sheriff Fred Diamond of the Jackson County Sheriff. The incident made headlines around the world. There was a book published, and later I was contacted on social media by a lady named Chelsea Prince, who runs the Ocean Springs, Mississippi Historical Society. Miss Prince had an interest in the 73 encounter, and she informed me that a number of the Historical Society had just donated 2 full boxes of letters that belonged to Mr. Charles Hickson before he passed away. A lady by the name of Bethany Fayard had donated these items. Her parents bought Hickson's house when he died, and these papers were left in it. Miss Fayard had these 2 boxes of material in her garage, donated them to the Historical Society. Ms. Prince subsequently digitized the material and sent it on a thumb drive to see me. The author spent several days going through 1,500 separate items on the thumb drive. One letter in particular jumped out at me, dated March 20th, 1988, and was written by Mr. P.D. Nakase. Mr. Nakase was not your run-of-the-mill UFO researcher looking for more information. He was a NASA physicist. Yeah. This has been confirmed. Mr. Nakase spells it out very clearly in the letter. I tried to get NASA involved in an investigation at the time in '73, but the results were the same as your experience with the Air Force at Keesler. They were not interested. NASA has long claimed that it would readily look at any data that might provide evidence of alien life. But here you have a NASA physicist asking for it to conduct an investigation into this close encounter case, and it's not interested. To be honest, I was astonished to learn that a NASA physicist had shown interest in the case at all, going as far to ask NASA to investigate it. I was not surprised that it declined. One now must consider NASA's recent comments on the UAP topic and their independent study team report, which is now public. Surely we have to ask if NASA's attitude has changed at all since '73. Has it refused to investigate other encounters as part of this new UAP study? Who knows? After all, following some deliberation, NASA sidestepped a request from the White House in '77 to help it out with UFO inquiries. What I will say here and now is that I am prepared to let NASA make amends for not investigating these close encounter cases when it had the chance in '73. I'm willing to supply NASA with a copy of all the data and information that we have accumulated that related to the 1973 Pascagoula alien case. Will it ignore it a second time? Of course it will ignore it a second time. NASA's not interested. They are not interested in things that they can't control. and they can't control aliens, and they can't control their craft. So they're going to ignore the topic. Now, there was one more item in here that I really liked. And that was, they have sighting reports in here from throughout the month all over the U.S. This was dated July 27, 2023, 9:40 a.m. in Scotts, Michigan. Scotts is just east of Benton Harbor, about 25 miles. Duration of this encounter, 10 seconds. Said that there had been a storm the night before, and the soon-to-be UFO witness was picking up sticks in his backyard. All of a sudden, he heard a buzzing sound growing louder. That buzzing sound, I've heard it explained many times by people before something happens. Sometimes before a Bigfoot sighting, before a UFO sighting, sometimes before seeing an orb. All of a sudden, thinking it was a mosquito, he brushed at his ears, only to see a softball-sized, maybe about 6 inches in diameter, brown sphere fly by about 2 feet from his head. The object had a dull brown surface with no protuberances, control surfaces, or apparent life-generating devices. It flew straight like a bullet into the nearby woods, and the buzzing sound faded away. A subsequent search of the woods revealed nothing. I find this interesting for a couple of reasons. Why would it fly so close to his head? I think it wanted that man to see it. Otherwise, it would have flown the other direction into the woods and not be seen at all. There's always a reason to why these things act the way they do. They're obviously super intellect is running them, what we don't know. But the orbs are interesting. A brown orb, that's something I haven't heard of before, so I find that strange. But every month, MUFON Journal, MUFON, MUFON.com. I encourage you to become a member because it will astound you every month from around the world. The number of sightings, the number of people that chirp in, like me, who have written articles for it many times. It's interesting. Every month there's something in there that captures my interest. Now, I've written about missing people for the journal, and I've written about Bigfoot for the journal. So, for what it is. First case. Case involves a woman named Virginia Walter, 81 years old. Went missing July 4th, 1997 from Port Orchard, Washington. Port Orchard is on the water, essentially. She's retired from the Mason General Hospital in Shelton, where she lived the majority of her life, until moving to Port Orchard. She was an avid gardener, hiker, camper, walker, always stayed in good shape. In 1936, she married her husband, Walter, and they had one child, a daughter that was married. And she was raised in Olympia, Washington. Beautiful area of Washington State. If you've never been there, get over to the Olympic Mountains because it's absolutely gorgeous. On July 4th at about 3:30, she was living on a street called South Flower in Port Orchard. And she left there to take her daily walk. Her husband knew every day she walked, no big deal. She was becoming forgetful. Some people said it was early dementia, undiagnosed. But every day she went at the same time for a walk. And she left at 3:30. She usually came back in about an hour, maybe an hour and a half max. At 6:30, she hadn't returned, and Walter called the Kitsap County Sheriff, who responded. Sheriff got there and filled out a profile on what type of person Virginia was. This helps in searching. Was she in good shape? Was she taking medication? Was she delirious? Did she have dementia? Was she intoxicated? Was she taking drugs? How far could she normally walk? Did she have friends in the area? Did she take her wallet? Etc., etc., etc. And from this form, the first deputy on scene starts to make decisions about how he's going to handle the case. Is he going to call out search and rescue? Is he going to ask for a couple of deputies to come over and search the neighborhood? What's he going to do? Well, very quickly, the deputy realized that this is going to be a major ordeal. And by 7 p.m., he had already requested the Kings County Sheriff's helicopter to come to the neighborhood and do flyovers. He also requested a search and rescue call out for the following day if she hadn't been found. And then he requested that all deputies in the area respond, and they were going to do a neighborhood walk. All absolutely appropriate. Now, it was a warm July day, and there was no bad weather. But late that night, the deputy stated that they hadn't found anything. They would keep one deputy on site driving through the neighborhoods, and then early the next morning, on July 5th, they would start again. Well, on the 5th comes around, they already had 75 search and rescue personnel on scene at a local school acting as a search and rescue headquarters. The team decided that they would search within a mile radius of her home, and the first ones out the door were the canine units. And also, the helicopter from Kings County came again. Canines went into the field. There were 2 canine teams deployed at different times in different locations. And right away, they weren't picking up any scent trails. They weren't getting any assistance from the canines. It was not good. Well, they searched for almost 12 hours that day. July 6th, they had already made preparations to get more search and rescue people. This time they had 100 searchers. That's a lot, folks, for a neighborhood. And they'd also called in the Marines from the Naval Submarine Base in Bangor. And they decided to search fields in the area, creeks, rivers, walk it shoulder to shoulder. Searchers interviewed by the press later that day said that they believed that they walked as much as 10 miles. Until you walk 10 miles in a day, then come and tell me how tired you're going to be that night, and then go do it again the next day. That's why searching is very tiresome. July 7th, police detectives from the sheriff had gone door to door to door through the neighborhood, interviewing people, asking if they had seen Virginia. And son of a gun, they find somebody that saw her. And it was in a direction from her residence. She would have been walking south. She would have been walking northbound towards water. And she's seen by a resident, and the resident says she continued to walk. And she was ID'd because she had a distinctive gait, the way she walked, and she always walked stooped over. They confirmed it was her. So this location was near Roland and May Street, about 3,000 feet from her home, a little more than a half mile away, walking northbound. July 8th, 100 searchers again, and they focused everything from that point north, which would have made 100% sense. And north of that location was a highway, small highway, and then a field. And they put all of their emphasis going north through this field, shoulder to shoulder, looking for everything. They also had more canines, ground pounders. The family contributed more people. And again, they returned at the end of the day, no luck. Searchers are getting very frustrated at this point because they weren't finding anything that was pointing to where she might have gone or what was wrong. July 9th, 50 searchers covering the same area for the second time. Some areas they covered a third time. The July 10th, the Kitsap County Sheriff terminated the search and rescue. He said they had no place to look. They had no new leads. They were frustrated as all heck. Her husband, very sad, worried, lonely, missing his wife. Daughter came down, stayed with her dad. And there was nothing about this case for 2 years. Hard to believe. And then a transient living in a field 800 feet from where Virginia was last seen comes across bones in the field. Bones that seem to have female clothing with it. They get a hold of a neighbor. Neighbor calls the sheriff. Sheriff comes out. Well, there's only one disappearance in that area, and they thought it might be Virginia, but they weren't sure. So they called in a forensic anthropologist. July 28th, the anthropologist comes back and says, absolutely, it was Virginia. The coroner looks at the case and says the cause of death was hypothermia. I almost fell out of my chair. Bones. And the coroner states it's hypothermia. He has no idea. I'm not a physician. You cannot tell somebody died from hypothermia from bones. I'm sorry, just the facts. Local report for local consumption. Police confirmed the area where Virginia's body remains were found was inside the primary search and rescue zone, less than 1 mile from the home. Well, Dave, how could that be? They said that area was searched 3 times. They said the Marines were there searching. They did flyovers with the helicopter the first and second day. How could they have not seen her in the field? Yeah. I'm sorry that this photo was so bad, but that's what Virginia looked like. She had a receding hairline, older woman, 81 years old. Highly religious, Christian Fellowship Church. Now, here's the part that's pretty bizarre. Here's a map for you that I did. Her residence is right here. The day she disappeared, she walks north. Now, we don't know if she took this blue route, but I'm going to guess that she did, because at about this location near May Street, somebody sees her. That's the last place she's seen. And then she continues to go north. She's found right here in a field. Yes, 800 feet from this point to this point. Now, folks, they know she's going this direction. They know she stayed on a road. This would have been an area that was searched upside down and backwards 3 or 4 times, and they never found her. How is this possible? Let's think about it. She had a disability. She wasn't diagnosed with dementia, but she was forgetful. They all thought she had early dementia or early Alzheimer's. Water was right nearby. Multiple canines couldn't pick up a scent. The area was previously searched who knows how many times. But they didn't find her. Again, unbelievable. I'm sorry, it is just not believable. Okay, I'll get off my horse. I'll calm down. Case number 2. Equally unbelievable and very, very recent. This is a first time ever for a missing 411 case. A missing monk. Yeah. Also in Washington State. His birth name was Dadul Namgyal. His Buddhist name was Geshe Tenzin Choprak. We'll call him Dadul. We're missing November 7th, 2023 from the Siravasti Abbey north of Spokane, Washington, very close to the Idaho border. Now, I'm going to classify Dadul as an intellect. Here's why. He'd been a teacher at the co-ed Buddhist Academy, or the Abbey, and it was considered an Abbey in Tibetan tradition. It was a 300-acre property, very rural, very remote. And he was considered by everyone to be a Buddhist scholar. He taught at Emory University for 13 years. And during that time, he would take workshops at the Abbey in Washington at a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time as a visiting scholar. And each time he came to the Abbey, he was asked if he wanted to stay. His first visit was in 2008. He made a comment one time. He said, "Great conditions for individual growth." And it was one of the first Buddhist monasteries for nuns and monks. It was co-ed. Really unusual. Co-ed Tibetan Buddhist monasteries are really rare. But Dadul was loved. He'd been asked to stay like 8 times. Finally, he said, "Okay, I'm going to retire from my position teaching and I'll move out." And he did, and he was there for a year. And then this year, on November 7th, Dadul told another monk that he was going to go for a hike when the rain stopped, and it had been raining earlier that day. He left his wallet and his cell phone on his dresser. He knew every day at a certain time they had co-ed Tibetan prayer time. And it was something he did every day, and he was always early for it. But he didn't show up. And they knew that something was really wrong because he was always so punctual. So the monks and the nuns searched the property for 2 hours and then called the Pend Oreille County Sheriff. Sheriff arrived and immediately called for assistance. And their sheriff, Glenn Blakesley, green-lighted a massive search. He knew right away something was wrong. Because Dadul was considered a rock of a man. Not for his size, because he was very small. He was about 5'5". But he was considered so baseline, so normal, so smart, and so dedicated to his Buddhist traditions. Well, they searched into the night that first night, found nothing, and then early the next day, they started to contact neighbors in the area. And then he was told that Dadul was wearing warm socks, shoes, hat, and a coat. He was dressed for a good walk. The sheriff responded with 2 dog teams, drones, ground pounders. They decided on a 2-mile radius from the location he was last seen. They stated that he was in good health, he could hike, he was active. And they found a nearby resident who claimed that he saw him on Country Lane, which is the road to the Abbey. Location is about 12 miles south of Newport, Washington. Again, very close to the Idaho border. Just for the record, this right here is Spokane. Here's the Idaho border. And this is the Abbey, way out in the middle of nowhere. This is Mount Spokane State Park. A very lush and beautiful place. Great place for a Buddhist retreat. Well, ground pounders did it for 12 hours that day. They found nothing. November 9th, the search was even larger. They covered a little bit further out. Canines came back again. They found no new witnesses. Local neighbors further out were interviewed. Nothing new. November 10th. They split the search. Half of them were in close, half of them were further out. Local flyers were distributed. There was a news conference. They stated that there were no clues, no sightings, but they said there was no evidence of foul play. I'm always mystified when law enforcement says this stuff. Just because there's no evidence of foul play doesn't mean there isn't any foul play. The absence of evidence doesn't mean anything. You may be able to say you're leaning towards no foul play, but I don't know. So they did a 6-day search and rescue. Paulides sheriffs, local game wardens, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and U.S. Forest Service. They found nothing. That is weird. Because if you think about this man, he's devoted his life to his religious studies. The thought of him just walking away voluntarily makes no sense. Everybody said that he was in great spirits, sharp, together guy. Now, search ends November 17th, a few days after the search is over. There's an article in the paper about a rumor that Dadul was seen near Sandpoint, Idaho. Sandpoint is quite a distance. They said somebody said that they thought they saw him walking around. So they checked every religious setting within 20 miles. Nobody saw him. They checked with rescue missions. Nobody saw him. They checked everything they could. Nothing. Remember, he left his wallet and his phone behind. So they reiterated he had no signs of early dementia, healthy. So what happened here? Well, there was a weather event right before he disappeared. It had rained. They brought in canines. Canines could never find a scent. And then you, the villagers, have always asked about religious affiliations with disappearances. I would call Dadul a religious leader of the Buddhism movement for Tibet. And the strange thing is, there's been several religious leaders I've written about who have disappeared, some were never found, but who were found under really, really weird circumstances. So I think Dadul fits as also an intellectual. Again, the people there considered him a scholar. So you can't just walk away from that. Well, Dave, where would you go to search? That's $1 million question. I have no idea. And I know the Paulides sheriffs, I know the kind of searches they do, they're good. They don't back away. And they've got a good search and rescue team. And they would not give up the search unless they read a brick wall. So, Dadul, wherever you're at, I'm sure you're probably in a better place. And with all your life studying, I'm sure that you fit in real well wherever you're at. So, those are the two cases for today. Thanks for being here. Remember, I'll sign posters for you between now and Christmas. Give them to someone special. Buy a DVD and give them both items as a gift. And our website for our store is like North America, nabigfootsearch.com. I'm also over on Rumble with the news. If you've missed the news, it's still going up all the time on Rumble. Missing 411 Factual News with David Paulides. Missing 411 Factual News with David Paulides. First put Rumble, comma, Missing 411 Factual News with David Paulides in your search bar. You'll find me. Thank you for being here. Huck's been running around all day acting like a crazy girl, so she was too busy to come in and help Dave tonight. I didn't feel mistreated, but I hope she's having fun. Paulides out.